So this is my first time doing a voiceover. I'm showing the inks that I am starting off with from Woody's Goodies. This is a 24-ounce straw tumbler from HOGG. I did sand, prep, clean, and then apply the glitter to it before starting the video, just so that I could get right into the process. The glitter that I used is Hi-Ho Silver and Little Mercury, and those are available on our site. So I'm using a small paintbrush. It's a kind of a pointed paintbrush. You can use whatever you like, but this is the one that I like the most. When I dip into the alcohol inks, I want to make sure I dab that off a little bit so that I don't have a ton of ink on the brush. And then you're going to start just outlining your first area for your tie-dye swirl. So when I'm doing this, I dip in and then I kind of tap off on the side. And I'm kind of just taking those stroke marks around in a spiral formation, approximately where I want my tie-dye to start. What I try to do is I try to start with whatever color is kind of speaking to me. You can start with whatever color you want, it doesn't matter, but go with a darker color to start with because it's easier to follow your line. Like you wouldn't want to start with something like a yellow. Now when I'm doing these lines, I'm making them kind of wispy. I'm leaving spaces in between. I'm stretching, pulling some out further than others. Some are going to be short, like you're drawing little hairs on the cup. Just going in there and then making sure I'm dabbing off the excess ink so that it doesn't bleed out and make a big blob. And then just putting in those stroke marks for that first area. Now this isn't going to look the way it looks at the end until you get to the end. So you have to trust the process. We're going to end up going over this cup with the inks 2 times. I know that seems like a lot, but really it isn't. So you're going to go through your first and lay all of your colors down, and then you're going to go back through and start kind of working those colors into each other. There is no right or wrong when doing this first part. However you lay that first line down is how you're going to follow all the colors behind it. So it doesn't matter if you do 1 spot, 2 spots, 10 spots, if you do one big swirl like this, however you decide to do it is going to be perfectly fine. Now I took this one down around the bottom of the cup because I wanted to carry that tie-dye. I wanted it to have a fluid motion. So I wanted it to go across the bottom and everything as if it were actually done with dyes. And I'm leaving plenty of space. I'm sure you can tell that there's this wide open area here because I have a lot of colors that I want to put in this one. So I want to make sure that I have plenty of room to put all of those colors in. And then that's why we're also going to go over it a second time, is because there's all this space here. So going back over that second time and blending them together is going to help fill all of those little holes and blend the colors and make it look absolutely gorgeous. And if you guys haven't tried the inks from Woody's Goodies yet, then you're going to want to jump on that like immediately. Okay, so there's that first color. There is our outline that we're going to follow with the rest of the colors. So the second color is Big Fat Elvis. It's kind of a coral orange color. We're going to just dip right into the ink and then start following that line. Now you want to go in kind of a rainbow order. You want to be mindful of the inks that are going to be touching. So on this step, when you're on that inner part of the spiral there, you want to space your lines apart and give plenty of room in between. Otherwise, it'll all just blend together and make a blob. And this will make more sense when I get to the darker colors. You'll see what I'm talking about. So on this second color, I'm going to slightly overlap. I'm showing you here that there's some spaces. You can see the silver there. I'm leaving those spaces. The point here is not to totally fill it in solid. You want to leave openings. You want to leave spaces. And I'm slightly overlapping that first color, but not completely covering it. But you do want them slightly overlapping. And yes, being mindful of the colors that are touching each other, because the last thing you want to do is have two colors next to each other that blend and turn like brown or something that you didn't intend. So I'm going to take this one in a rudimentary rainbow order where I'm going from the red to the orange to the yellow in that direction. That way I can know that they're all going to blend flawlessly into each other. So we're going to continue with this, dipping into the ink, dabbing it off on the inside of the cup. And I just dip the tip of the paintbrush in and then press it to the edge of the little cup there. And that's just to make sure that I don't get too much ink at once. You can always dip back in, but it's really, really hard to remove it once you have a big blob on there. I apologize if you guys can hear cars in the background. We live next to the road. Our shop is next to the road, so that is just a thing that we're going to hear. Now what you'll see me doing here is you'll see me going both directions with the paintbrush. Sometimes I will push in the direction towards the other color. Sometimes I will pull outwards. That's going to determine how they blend together. So by doing it the way that you're seeing here, I'm kind of just laying them on top of the previous color and pulling that out. If I go the other direction, I'm going to pull that orange into that red color, and it's going to create that blend. And it's going to pull that directly through the previous color, and that's where you're going to start seeing some of those lines come out that make it look like a realistic tie-dye. And I wanted to do this tutorial 100% in real time. I didn't want to speed anything up because I wanted you to get a sense of exactly how long this is going to take, and I wanted you to be able to stop and start on anything that you needed a closer look on. There may be brief little pauses of time where you don't hear me talking, and it's just because I can only ramble so much. I'll spare you guys. Okay, so I'm kind of just going back through here with the paintbrush, just what the ink that's left on the brush, and kind of just working it through. Trying to make sure I'm holding it in a way that you guys can see how there's all the spaces in between and how those colors are kind of laying on top of each other but not fully covering. Now I have a little cup set off to the side. Don't come for me for my nails. And I put the alcohol in it. That's how I clean the brush. So I rinse the brush in 91% isopropyl, dry it off on a napkin. It doesn't have to be completely clean when you're using similar colors, but like this time around, I'm going to be going into the yellow, and I want the yellow to be yellow. So I want to make sure that I don't have any of the, like a ton of ink left over on my paintbrush, and you can even use a different paintbrush if that works for you. It's lemon drop. So like if I had used one of the darker colors, I would want to make sure that that brush is completely clean before going into the lighter colors. Otherwise it'll get really muddy. Lemon drop is my favorite yellow. And I need to make sure I go buy more before you guys go buy it all, because trust me, you're gonna love this. So it's so bright and so vivid. And what I'm doing here now, like I was telling you before, is when you're on that inside, you're gonna wanna just dot in your colors just a little bit and give them space. You're not gonna want these to be too close or too fanned out. Just a couple little dots of color on that inside swirl, because you can always add more later if you need to. And I'm kind of just going to go through. I'm being careful not to overlap too much because I don't want to lose the yellow. I want to try to hold on to as much of that yellow as I can. But you can see as each color overlaps, they start creating their own color. So we've only put 3 colors on here, but we have 5 total. As they start blending, they start making new colors. Just going through, brushing that yellow in. No rhyme or reason to this. I didn't plan ahead. If you're giving yourself plenty of space to work, making sure that you're not clumping your brush strokes too close together and giving room in between the brush strokes. So I'll go, if you watch my strokes there, I'll like brush, 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 and then I'll give space, and I'll go longer, short, short, give space. Like it's kind of sporadic. But if you give yourself space, you can always go back in later and fill it in where it needs filled in. Don't be afraid of it looking kind of patchy at first, because that is so easy to fix, and it actually makes it a lot easier come the end steps to make it look like a realistic tie-dye. I was really taking my time with this while I was filming it, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't moving my hand so fast that you guys couldn't even tell what I was doing. And also trying to hold that cup up. Y'all, those cups get heavy. And then having that first start off point, the first spiral that was created, it just lays everything in a perfect little pattern. So it makes it so easy as you go color by color to know where you need to be next. And I absolutely love the way that corally orange color looks when it blends with the yellow. It's so vibrant and pretty. Making sure I don't forget to go to the bottom. Just want to maintain all the way around that spiral. And you kind of want to think about this first pass through of colors as laying the foundation. And then when we go back through and do the second coat, that's going to be where all the details come in. Got some pretty blends coming through on that. I absolutely love the way the colors look on this, and I prefer doing the inks over the silver glitter as opposed to doing it over an opal or a white glitter. I think the end result is much more satisfying. It actually looks like it's all of those different colors of glitter, which is exactly what I was going for. And the reason that I mixed the Hi-Ho Silver and the Little Mercury is one is a fine and one is an extra fine. And I wanted a little bit of like a mixed feel on it so that it had a little bit more depth. Okay, so for the green, the Midori Sour was too light and the Pickleback is too dark, but it's in the tone that I wanted. So I did probably about 4 drops of Midori Sour and then like a drop and a half of the Pickleback. So, I mean, that's like a rough estimate of my ratio there. But it was at least twice as much of the lighter green. And because I know what color I'm going in with next, this green really is just to kind of be a transition point. It's not really going to be a huge visual. Like you're really not going to see a lot of the green because it's so light like the yellow. But I wanted to kind of have a little bit more of a transition point to put the next color in. Now, if you want your green to be like really, really bold, then you would just use the darker. Because one of the colors that I chose to go on next is a teal color that I'm very, very fond of. I knew that blending that teal into the yellow was going to create a darker green. So that was why I chose to do it this way and just add a little bit of that lighter green in there as like a middle point, so to speak. And then because I want it to be consistent all the way through, I'm taking that through all the different areas. Don't forget the bottom. And I was looking at it at this point thinking, oh, okay, this is like summer sherbet vibes. Like I really love these colors. So I almost changed my mind on the teal, but then I decided to just go for it because I really wanted the teal on there. So I wiped the alcohol off on a paper towel before rinsing it. It just helps keep the rinse cup cleaner for longer. And then I'm going to grab that teal color, which is curacao. I'm not even positive I'm saying that correctly, but that's how I've always thought it was pronounced. Could be curacao. I don't know. I'm sure someone will know and someone will let me know I'm saying it incorrectly in the comments. So you'll be able to see with this one, because this is a much darker color, the way I go in with this one. I'm going to go in a lot lighter with this dark color so that it doesn't take over the entire cup. So I'm literally just dotting in to that inner spiral. And this doesn't seem like it's going to be effective at first, but Trust me. If you go heavier in that middle point, they are all going to run together and you're going to lose the detail in the center. And I'm taking this mostly over the green that I laid down. I really, really, really love this color. So again, you just go in there and just lightly pull your brush through. Don't push down really hard. You're just really light hand. Like you really want to be gentle while you're doing this, because if you push your brush really hard into the cup, then it's going to squeeze out all the ink that's in there and it's going to go running and it's going to create a whole mess. Ask me how I know. So very little ink on the brush. You only have to dip the very tip of the brush in, tap it off on the edge of the cup, and then with a really light hand, you want to just go in and kind of just lightly brush it onto the cup. Now my favorite thing about the teal is when it's mixed with pink or red, any of the colors that go down first, like it doesn't matter what shade they are, it turns an absolutely gorgeous purple. So if you put those two colors closer together, you won't even need to use a purple. If you're limited on inks, you can do some testing and see like what colors you can put together to create your in-between colors. I love the little happy surprises, like when I'm creating these and colors start blending together and I'm like, oh, that was unexpected. So at this point, you're probably looking at this thinking, oh my gosh, it's like so spotty. It doesn't look like the one that I saw in the video. But that is why I mentioned that we're going to be doing 2 coats so that you can be more comfortable with leaving yourself some space during this first pass. If you go in on the first pass trying to blend everything together right out of the gate, it's just not going to work well for you. It's going to be more difficult to create that final look than it will be by doing it this way, by laying down your colors and then going back in and adding a second coat to blend them all together. Now where this seam meets in the back, every one that you do is going to be different. It just depends on how broad your original spiral is and how close together you are placing your colors, how small or large you're wanting your tie-dye to reach. So if you were to go in with much shorter lines and not do the longer lines like I've been doing, then you're going to have more colors in that spiral. Like it's going to repeat the colors more frequently. I prefer to do the longer lines because I don't want it to get too messy, for one. So I'm showing you here the space in between the blue and the red color. So you can see there's lots of silver showing through on this cup. But yes, I do the longer lines because I like for it to have like a burst kind of look and not get too messy by having too much going on. Cleaning the brush off. Grapesicle is the next color. Again, all of the inks are from Woody's Goodies. I will link in the description. I will link the glitter. I'll link the cup. I will link the inks. The brush I got at the dollar store, so nothing fancy there. It's a really, really cheap brush. Okay, so the last color in this little design here is the purple. So in that area, what I'm pointing out is that I just did the little dots of color. So I'm gonna kind of alternate the purple in between where I laid those other ones in that spiral. And then I'm gonna start working that through the entire cup. And I kept the teal color, I kept it small on purpose. So right there on that inside, you notice like there's not enough teal, right? Like we need more of that. And that's why I do the second coat, is because once I go back through, I can add exactly what color I need, where I need it to be. And I want to intentionally put that blue in so that it doesn't take over the yellow and so that it blends right into the purple. So I kind of like to put it on lightly at first and then really get in there on that second coat and do lines that are closer together and, you know, blend it in. So I'm just making sure that as I'm laying the purple, again, I'm alternating the length of my lines. Some are long, some are short. But I'm taking that from within the blue to within the red. I'm bringing those two colors together with this purple. And like I said, there is no right or wrong where this is concerned. You just want to kind of keep in mind that once you lay the colors, it's a little difficult to remove them. I mean, you can work around some little minor errors, and I am going to show that to you guys as well at some point, not during this video, but you can work around little errors, but trying to make sure that you are keeping your lines pretty much where you're wanting them to end up is going to make the end result a lot easier to accomplish. Sorry, the cup is a little bit out of frame here. My arm was getting so tired and I didn't realize that I was drooping. So changing directions with the brush is going to accomplish a few different things. It's going to blend in both directions. So if you can see where I started with the purple and the blue, it's not really blended. Like the colors are mixing, but it's not really blended. If I were to take my brush the opposite direction and go towards the center when I was putting those purples into the blue, then it would drag it through a little bit more and blend it. And again, that's where the second coat is, like, it's the money, I'm telling you. Because you go back in and you start kind of moving the colors around a little bit more and concentrating them a little bit more, and that's where the magic happens. I know that back part looks goofy, but again, trust the process. Once we start pulling those colors into each other and adding that second coat on there, it's going to be everything. So I'm starting with the second coat now. That was the first color, Slippery Nipple. Don't you just love how these are all named after cocktails? I have hiccups. Excuse me, you guys, if you can hear me hiccup. All right, so what I'm going to do on the second coat is I'm literally going to just go right back over where I laid the first line of color. So because there's that first line of color there, you don't have to concentrate as much. Like you don't have to do as many lines. But this is where I'm going to start really dragging those colors out and exaggerating them and pulling them through the other colors. And as we do that on the second coat, we pull everything out. That's what starts really making it come together and make sense. And you can see that's really exaggerated, especially there in that center part. You can see like where I'm just kind of going over and pulling in some darker lines. Because once you do the second coat over, the ink is a little bit darker. It does put off more of a color payout. It's going to be a little bit more vibrant on that second pass. And see, I'm going to start going on this step as well. I'm going to start going both directions with my brush. So you'll see me pull the lines out from the center, and then you'll see me go in and pull them through towards the center. And I'm really just going through and just over exaggerating that first layer of color. I'm not completely filling in, like I put more color down on the first pass than I do on this pass, but I'm kind of just going in and exaggerating some of those spots, pulling some of that ink out into the other colors. Starts making the whole thing come together. And I'll kind of rotate the cup and, you know, look at it and look at the areas and see like, okay, I need a little bit more red here. Or you'll see maybe you need more purple. So like, then that's, I do it color by color instead of like dipping back and forth. That way it's easier to keep track of and to keep the brush from getting all mixed up with different colors. So you can kind of look at it and be like, oh, okay, this one needs to be longer. This needs to be pulled through a little more. And just remember that we're going to go color by color. So right now it looks like the red is officially taking over. But we're going to do this with each of the colors, so they're all going to be exaggerated like that. So this is the coral orange color, Big Fat Elvis. This is the second pass with that color. I'm kind of just going to go through on that center and just put a couple little lines down on that center part. Again, to not make it muddy. And then I also want to keep in mind that I want my yellow to show as much as possible. So I don't need to put as much of the orange, because once that yellow hits the red color, it's going to turn orange anyways. So I'm really kind of just putting some little fillers in there to give some variation of color on top of that red. You guys will start seeing this make way more sense now that we're towards the end of the video. Just keep going around the cup, dropping in those lines. This is where the silver that was showing before starts getting completely covered, slowly disappearing where you won't see any more of that underneath glitter color. And I wanted this part to be really exaggerated to show you like how I just go in and I'm just creating a line. And you want to do your best to make the outside of the line, the part that you're dragging outwards, you want the end of it to be thin. So instead of just being like a thick solid line, you're going to want to use your brush in a way that's like a stroke. Of course you do. I hope that this translates well. I hope this makes sense. So you're putting the most of your pressure down at the contact point, and then you're kind of feathering your brush out so that the end point is thinner than the beginning point. You want to create those little wispy ends. You want the ends of the lines that you're putting in to be wispy. Super technical term. This is my first time doing a video with voiceover, so I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me during this. I'm hoping that I get a little bit better at it so that I can fill the little awkward quiet spots with music or sound effects or something fun. This one's gonna kind of be like the tester. Making sure I don't forget the bottom here. Just kind of going in and pulling the red color into the yellow. Pulling from the red color into the yellow because you want to slightly overlap both colors. So this is the yellow again, Lemon Drop. It was really hard to get that guy in focus because it's such a bright yellow. At this point, it doesn't matter where you start or stop laying your colors, as long as you can keep track. Like if you know where you did and where you didn't, then that's all you need. So you'll see here, I'm pulling towards the center. And that's because I'm trying to blend that yellow more in towards the middle. And then once I go outwards, I'm blending it more into the teal color. And I'm kind of giving myself like a lot of space with this yellow. Because I am going to be going back in with that teal. And I want to make sure I have room to play with that one as well. So you can see where the yellow is being pulled into that teal, how it's creating like a really pretty green. So pulling out, pulling in. This is where going back and forth with the brush are going to be key. So you're wanting to pull that yellow through the blue, through the teal color, and you're also wanting to pull it towards the center so that it's creating that separation of those colors, but also blending them together. And this is where it's really important to make sure that you're only getting a little bit of ink on your brush, just enough to do, a couple little strokes at a time. Too much ink on your brush is gonna cause like a, I wanna call it like a mudslide, where you're gonna touch your brush down and it's just gonna like pool up and run, and it's gonna take all the colors with it because alcohol ink reacts to alcohol ink. So if you were to spray alcohol on this or drip another color on it, it's going to take everything with it and it's going to create a big old mudslide. And I apologize again for the cup being out of frame. So I kept a paper towel close by because as I would drag that yellow through the blue color, it would pick up a little bit of green on my paintbrush. And I didn't want to drag that green through the orange if I could help it, because it wouldn't make a pretty color. So that's why I'm going with the brush. I'm going downwards into that orange and red color, and then I go outwards towards the blue, so that as I'm blending in each direction, I'm not creating a muddy mess with it. So it's very, very intentional the way that I'm doing it there. And I can notice, like when you're doing it, you'll be able to see, I can see when I have green on my brush, and I want to make sure not to take that into the orange. So I just literally just wipe my brush off on a paper towel and it takes it off, because it's just a little bit, but it is enough for you to notice. Almost out of my yellow. So you can kind of see how the burst is happening now. Going back in with that teal. It's starting to really make more sense by this point. This is when we start seeing everything like really come together, and you can start to kind of like ooh and ah at it, because you're like, oh, okay, this is really making sense. This is going to be pretty. So I want to be careful not to completely overtake the yellow that I have down. So I'm really focusing on dragging that teal color through the purple, not so much into the yellow. I mean, I do want to blend it a little bit into the yellow, but not a lot, because otherwise I will completely lose all of my yellow. Excuse me and my hiccup. Just passing through there with those little spaced out lines. The slight overlap onto the yellow, creating that really pretty green, and then when it hits the purple, it just makes a different version of purple, which is really, really pretty. So it actually like goes from like an indigo to a violet when those two mix. It's really pretty. This is where you want to kind of just take a look at it and see like where you need to be adding more definition. Taking those lines into each color. And this is what's going to create that burst look once you get finished. So making sure you're dragging your brush towards the center and also away from the center to give it that burst type look. And I'm sitting here doing a voiceover alone in my studio, and I am still talking with my hands. So it's just proof that it doesn't matter if anyone can see me or not. I still talk with my hands. Trying to get a nice close-up for you guys so you can see as I lay down the colors how they're reacting to each other and how I'm kind of going over the top of the colors that were laid down previously. So pulling that blue through the purple into the red. And also into that yellow just a little bit to create the separation there. You can see on the left-hand side there, so you can see how it's all kind of jagged looking. That's what we're going for. You want that kind of jagged, broken look. That's what lets the colors all get in between each other and look like a realistic tie-dye. And what I'm doing with the brush there, like when I'm really like getting in there and like wiggling the brush around, is I'm kind of blending those two colors together. They're already overlapping, so I'm kind of just taking the brush, it has barely any ink on it at all, and I kind of just work it back and forth in that section to really blend those two colors together. That blending motion isn't something that you want to do with all the colors, but the teal to the purple specifically, because they just look so pretty when they're overlapped, it works really well for those. And this is where I have the opportunity to go back and alter the shape of this little seam up the back here. I don't know what else to call it. It's a seam. So I can go in and pull that teal color through and kind of create some more separation in this little section. And I haven't dipped my brush back into the ink on this section. I will in a second, but if you notice, like I'm not going right back into the ink because I don't want to put too much color in this little spot right here in order to maintain that detail. If I go in too heavy with that teal color in this little section, like I'm going to lose all of the other colors right there. So I'm trying to be really mindful of the other colors I'm trying to keep while also chopping up and creating that shape in that area. I'm kind of going in and working that teal into the purple and then dragging it outwards. And don't forget the bottom. It's really, really, really starting to look nice. Okay, so this is really when you want to take a good look at it and see if there's any other places where you're going to want more color, if you need to add purple, if you need to add your blue, whatever it may be. Like, you can really look at it and see where you want to add or create something different in that shape. You'll be able to tell when you're looking at it. You'll see like kind of like a spot that's just not as blended as the other spots, and you can work that color through as needed. And this is the final result. So it's a little bit different on this video because it's not washed out by my flash, but that's what it looks like all finished. You will need to spray seal this, clear coat it with a clear spray paint before you epoxy. Do 2 to 3 light coats and you should be perfectly fine. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're going to be posting more videos. I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. I have missed you guys and I am so excited to be back creating again. Thanks for watching.